Welcome into Dynasty Mode, the unofficial EA Sports college football video game podcast. My name is Arky Shea. This is an emergency edition of this podcast. So Dimitri is actually working on stuff that's actually important with his day and his job. I, on the other hand, have to talk about the breaking news. Huge news for the college football video game as it was announced today, officially, today being, May 17th, that Electronic Arts has finally decided that they are definitely having real players in the video game because they have partnered with a brand called One Team, and they will handle all of the NIL stuff for all of the college football programs that we will be seeing in the video game. A little bit of hand clap and done. Okay, so here's the thing about that. The college football video game is having a huge step here. We have talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast. You can go back and look through this channel and see some of the episodes about it and other things. That this is a very important piece for Electronic Arts. Not necessarily for us. My friend Dimitri says this is the least important part about the video game. We can customize rosters, and I have said before, then once you get a couple of years down the road in your quote-unquote dynasty, then you don't have to have these near perfect, very cool-looking, very real players because they're all going to be AI-generated players that we figure out anyway. Been doing that for a long, long time with the video game. But it is very, very, very important for a couple of reasons. One, Electronic Arts has always wanted to do this from the very beginning. In fact, this is the huge crux of the issue, why Electronic Arts has this new video game called College Football 2025, and not, I don't know, NCAA Football 2025. And the reason is very, very simple. Electronic Arts wanted real players in the video game. They wanted to compensate said players in the video game. But the NCAA said, no, that would violate our amateurism status. But they also said that don't worry about it. We will get a waiver. They will have all of these rights waived for you to be able to use all of their images. So don't you fret, Electronic Arts. We got your back. Now, you may know that was not the case. They went through lots of legal wrangling, and the NCAA, as well as Electronic Arts, lost a lot of money because of that and said settlements. But the thing to know, that as much as we want to poo-poo on the Electronic Arts for some of their decisions, they've always wanted to pay the players. It's always wanted to be part of their mantra with this game. The NCAA just wouldn't let them. And despite the fact that we did get players on the cover, they were never in the video game. And despite the fact that we did get players on the cover, they were just recently graduated. But we never fully got the players themselves in the video game. And now they'll be allowed to opt in to what we find out is a terrific NIL plan. I have no idea. Because here's the crux of the matter on that is that we have no idea how much it will cost each and every single person to be in it, or how much they would benefit, I should say, financially from it. That's also important because you've got to figure out that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of players at the FBS level. Now, I should tell you this also, that we did get further news that FCS teams are not going to be a part of this game when it launches next summer. 0, 0, 0. So as much as we had hoped, as much as we had prayed, and some of us may have even hit our knees and thanked more than those that are spiritually above us, we're not getting it. Now, it could be downloadable content later, but they are focused on the football bowl subdivision teams, FBS teams, that are going to be a part of the game at the start. Now, I think that's super wise, but right now, we have no idea if FCS teams are going to become a part of it at some point. Now, back to the FBS players getting paid part, because that's also important. I started to do some math, okay, as far as what these players might be able to get paid. And I have told you before on this podcast that I think, conservatively speaking, even though this number has never been hit before by this video game, the absence makes the heart grow fonder factor, plus the booming popularity in college football and the booming popularity of video gaming. Not just the booming popularity of it, but those who are my age, late 30s, 40s, 50s, not being ashamed of playing video games, being very open about it, out there streaming their video games, for crying out loud. That I think this will hit 3 million plus copies, no problem. No problem. They've never hit that number before, but I think they will. Now, if we extrapolate that number out, okay, extrapolate that number out, that's about $180 million that they would make just from base sales of this game. Now, the overhead is going to be fairly low because a great deal of tonnage from this is going to be from the actual digital download market now that exists, as it did not when the game came out in 2013 last. So that will reduce costs for them. But if we just say that's our base number to start with, if you gave every single player $5,000, every single one that opted in, and I cannot imagine any players on any campus not wanting to opt in, we're roughly looking at 125 players, that's scholarship and non, for every program, all 133 of them. If that happens, then the max payout total you would be seeing in that case, if they're all getting a straight flat $5,000, it's going to be about $160 million. Or excuse me, about $86 million. Now, that's good. That's good. That's roughly half of what the budget's going to be. In fact, let me do that number real quick one more time because I'm doing this in the fly. 125 players times 133 teams times $5,000 a piece, and that is $83 million. So $83 million of that 180 million would be going straight to players. Now, I imagine they won't do that, and certain players will get higher numbers than other players, like a Caleb Williams, for example, would probably get a $10,000 mark per se, and maybe, just maybe, the backup punter is not going to get 5,000 or 10,000. But again, we're just doing straight numbers, okay? It's feasible. It's very, very feasible and very, very doable, especially since you have the addition of downloadable content. Hey guys, this is a splash in. We just learned some news. By the time you hear this, you would not have known that technically we have found out after I stopped recording and before I put this up, but now you will because I said that. Good move by me. It's about the compensation for the players themselves. Due to now some reporting from On3 and our friend Matt Brown, we now know sort of what the player pool looks like for the amount of dollars available for the FBS players who are interested in being a part of the video game, and it turns out it's around $5 million. $5 million is far less than the number I was possibly advocating for before. In fact, that number rose out to be about $500 per player, not $5,000 per player, which is still money, and you still get to be a part of a cool video game. Matt Brown, you may remember, reported on this podcast that the number was closer to 3 figures than it was to 4 or 5 figures. So now that we have a little bit more in-depth reporting on it, it seems to be that the $5 million for the pool is what we're looking at, and about $500 per player. Still not swaggy. I bet they get a download code too. Do not be surprised if they get a download code too. You opt in, you get that code. Also, by the way, if you're listening EA, I would like that code as well. So whenever you're ready, drop into the direct messages and hand me the code. All right, back to the show in which I sound amazing in. Now, that's the base news in and of itself, which is those players are going to be able to get paid. Now, Dimitri has said this is not a big deal. Don't worry about these players right now. We need to worry about getting everything right with the game itself. It's true. But the players themselves are important. Dimitri and I live in a world where it's dynasty mode or nothing. And I appreciate that. But the more we do this podcast, the more we read your comments here on YouTube, and the more we see them on our social media, especially Twitter. There's my handle down there at the bottom. We start to find out that there are more and more people that are not like us. There are more and more people who just like to play. Maybe more and more people that just like to collect cards. And I mean like the player card, collect players in the game itself. like to unlock and earn them, so to speak, just like you earn trophies and achievements on, whichever system you happen to be in. So that makes this all the more important because if you want to be able to unlock or download or to have your current player, why not? And by the way, when the game comes out, you're going to want the most recent roster, which would be this upcoming year's roster, in your game console. Right now, things can change with injuries and players transferring out, but that's fine. There's all kinds of updates to adjust starters and move guys in and out, but the players that exist themselves, you want to be able to play with when it comes to like play now modes or to go up against your buddies and say, I'm going to take, the 2024, Georgia Bulldogs and the 2024, I don't know, Clemson Tigers, right? You're going to want that more so than if you're not just going to spend all your time in dynasty mode. And I completely understand. That makes 100% sense. That's a big deal. That's the biggest deal why the biggest reason why this deal needed to happen is because there is a lot of money in that licensing. There's a lot of money in being able to say, all right, Caleb Williams, your name's on this, and we're going to play with you, partner. And we're going to have you in play now mode. Who knows if you're on the cover? We're going to have you as far as play now. We're going to have you in the actual dynasty. We're going to have you all over the game because you've given us the access to that. And that's a huge deal. There's a lot of money there and a lot more money that can go to players themselves. Now, an interesting side note of that is that Electronic Arts has basically said that we may not be able to face scan everybody. That it's expensive to do so, and the timing would have to work out. So maybe not everybody either opts in or gets themselves a cool little face scan, which is kind of wild, right? Because then you might be looking at, it won't happen to Caleb Williams, but maybe, you look down the draft board of some of these top offensive tackles, for example, right? Do you get the accurate face of, let's say, one of the top 20 tackles in the country? Or do you just get all of his dimensions and his jersey number and the guy gets paid and maybe a copy of the video game? That still seems to be a little bit determined, right? But the big news is, the important news is, Electronic Arts gets what it has always wanted, which is the ability to pay players inside the video game. That's all they wanted to do from the beginning, is to pay players, and now they can. Now they don't have to feel icky about it. The NCAA has this amateurism thing, right? It's always had it until NIL came around. They didn't want to be the bad guys, even though they were always the bad guys. They wanted to keep all the money and have all the universities keep all the money. And I would say the NCAA was empowered by the Power 5 institutions mainly to be able to keep it so. But that has changed. And we are in a brave, new, exciting world, especially when it comes to our content. That's right, our content, which is, of course, surrounding this video game. So it's huge news on that front too. So I'm very excited that this is the day that this has finally come. We have been waiting so long for something like this to happen. We thought it'd never get here, but this is the big news of the day. And let me tell you another thing about this video game and getting the actual name, image, and likeness rights. For as often as we've done doing this podcast, we've talked about how that is big deal, small deal for some people, or big deal for other people, right? And we have often said, as I just mentioned, Dimitri and I, smaller deal, bigger deal for people who want to be able to play as their team, just on a one-off basis or a one-season basis kind of thing. What this does set up, though, is something that I think is super interesting, which is, as this continues to grow, do we start looking at negotiations for the college football players, right? Do we start seeing, let's just go back to Caleb Williams, one of the preeminent stars in the league or in the country coming into this next season. Will we start seeing him want to negotiate percentages of DLC? Maybe he gets a higher number of dollars just to be in the game, but maybe he wants more attributes, right? Or maybe he wants a lower number or just an even number, like what everyone else may be able to get for being in the game, and then wants to negotiate, what we call, quote unquote, back end stuff. I'm very fascinated to be able to watch that. That is going to be a cool evolution to see. Uh, whether or not EA Sports is able to figure out this is a flat rate for everybody, or Caleb Williams, for example, says, no, if you want me to come to the table, let's talk. And then it turns into an actual negotiation for your name, image, and likeness, and not just, oh, I don't know, a collective giving you money to show up. That's true. One other thing I want to shout out and get out of the way. I want to shout out to Notre Dame and Tulane and all the Northwestern and all the crummy phonies who can now get off their high horse. Those who said, we will not be a part of the video game until NIL is figured out. As if they were ever not going to be a part of a brand new college football video game. You know what these programs like? Money. You know what else they like? Attention. Of course, Notre Dame and Tulane and Northwestern were going to be a part of the new video game. How do you become a part of that and not have your fan base or anyone else want to sit there and look at your mug every single time they play it? A game without Notre Dame is fine. The game will move on without you. But being in the game where people can play you, mega exposure. They were never going to not be in the game. It was never a real idea. It was never a point. Even though 120 plus FBS institutions had committed well before this, Notre Dame and a handful of others said, no, we'll wait. Well, now you can finally stop with this phony charade. Okay, this phony, it's about the kids. It's about the kids. You were always going to be a part of the game. Always. And now, this last dagger has been removed from the quiver itself. And you can finally rest easy. Because you, Notre Dame, and you, Tulane, and you, Northwestern, you all can be a part of the video game now. And it's so great. Finally, I get to play. Oh, I've been waiting forever to play as Pat Fitzgerald's team. Oh, it's killing me. Come on. The next step we need to do is make sure this game is good as hell. Okay? This now allows us to focus completely on the game development. We don't need to worry about these negotiations anymore. They're done for the most part. Oh, it's like a drop-down menu. It says, do you want to be a part? Yes. Good. There you go. Your check's on the way. Get this game good as hell. And also bring us coaches. Bring the coaches in on this as well. If you got to pay Nick Saban and if you got to pay Chip Kelly, go pay him. Fine. I don't care. Go pay them. I mean, I hope they wouldn't get like 10 times what a player gets, but, whatever. Go get the coaches too. You tried a little bit with NCAA 13 or 14. You tried to give us a little bit of kind of sort of look like a coach. But did you really? Now you can do it. Now you can feel good about paying the players and the coaches because they're all getting a share in the wealth itself. So, excitement abounds as the new college football video game has some progressive news, and we, my friends, are done with this podcast. Now, Dimitri usually likes to say stuff like save and send to next week, but I can't because that's not my catchphrase. So my catchphrase for when I'm doing a podcast by myself is going to be goodbye.